Today we're going to run through a case study and I'm going to show you how their income looks now versus how it looks once they're forced to start taking their required minimum distribution. And then we're going to talk about the impact it could have on a surviving spouse if one of them were to pass away earlier than expected. If you're new here, my name is Ryan. I'm the founder of Denali Financial Group, and we help those of you that are close to or in retirement. And stay to the end because we're going to have a quiz that you can take simply called How Much Do I Need to Retire? So we'll talk more about that here at the end. Let's jump into this case study. So let's say that this couple is 73 years old and they've got a pension, a really good one, and that and their Social Security has pretty much been covering their expenses throughout retirement. They retired at 65, their expenses have been covered, their house was paid off, their cars were paid off, they lived a pretty simple life. So they weren't having to take any of their money out of their retirement accounts that they had saved, right? I always call those tax later retirement accounts, also known as tax deferred, money you still owe tax on. So Bob and Mary had not had to touch any of this money, and that was a great thing. They felt great about it. The money we had saved, we weren't even dipping into in our late 60s because of our pension and our good Social Security. Let's look at how that looks once they hit age 73 and start to have required minimum distributions. Bob actually gets a $36,000 per year pension. He also gets Social Security of $30,000. And by the way, Mary did not work. So she stayed at home with the kids, but she still qualifies for Social Security, but she just gets the spousal benefit. So we're going to say she gets 50% of Bob's. So she's getting $15,000. So they've got the pension of $36,000, Bob's Social Security of $30,000, Mary's Social Security of $15,000. But now they're forced to start taking required minimum distributions, right? And so I mentioned they had this retirement account, but now it has grown and they're sitting at $1 million nest egg sitting in their traditional IRA, that tax deferred, tax later bucket. So they've got $1 million. So their required minimum distribution is going to be $37,000 that year. And what I always call this is forced income. This is income you don't need, and you don't even have to spend the money you take out, but you just have to pay the tax on it, right? So when you calculate in that RMD, plus you assume that $38,000 of that $45,000 of Social Security is taxable, you get to an income number of $111,000. So by the way, they're also married filing jointly, so their standard deduction is $32,300, bringing their taxable income down to $78,950, which puts them in the 12% marginal tax bracket with an effective tax rate of 11.4%. All in, they're going to pay about $9,000 in taxes for that year. Okay, but what happens if Bob were to pass away unexpectedly due to a heart attack, right, at age 73? How would that have an impact on Mary's tax situation moving forward? So let's jump right back into this case study. Let's look at how this income would look for Mary. So number one, Bob was really smart. He cared a lot about making sure Mary was well taken care of if something did happen to him. So she still gets $36,000 in his pension, right? He took 100% survivor, meaning if something happens to him, she gets the full amount. Now, does Mary lose Bob's Social Security? No, but she can't keep both, right? So she's going to keep the bigger one. She's going to keep Bob's $30,000 a year in Social Security, but her $15,000 a year goes away. So let's take a look at her overall breakdown. She still has the pension. She has the $30,000 in Social Security. She's still taking on the RMD of $37,000, but she is now a single filer. Her standard deduction is not $32,000. Instead, it's $16,550. So her taxable income was $78,000 when she was married. Now it's $81,000, but she also lost $15,000 in Social Security, right? But still has a higher taxable income. So where does that put Mary when it comes to tax brackets? Well, you probably guessed it, right? She jumps from the 12% where she was with Bob when they were married to now she's in the 22% tax bracket. It's the largest tax bracket jump that you can have. So to summarize this, Mary loses her husband. She loses a stream of income, her Social Security, so $15,000 goes away. She makes less money than she did before, but she jumps into that next tax bracket and pays $4,000 more in taxes than she did when she was married to Bob, making $15,000 more. And this is why we call it the widow's penalty, because Mary did absolutely nothing wrong. She lost her husband, yet she has to pay more taxes because she's now a single filer than she did when she was married filing jointly. So let's talk about how this could have been prevented. What are some things that you could be actively doing and something that Bob and Mary could have been doing prior to age 73 if they were just a little more proactive? And really, it's not on Bob and Mary, it's on their financial advisor, right? Because here's what happened to Bob and Mary and what I see happen all the time. They walked into a financial advisor's office who does not do holistic financial planning, right? They don't do any tax planning. They don't help you with income planning, none of that, right? They walked into an advisor. They said, we have this IRA. We don't need to touch it. Please invest it. And by the time they were 73, it was $1 million and they were happy, right? They were great with that. But they could have been even better off with a more proactive approach. So let's talk about what that would look like. Let's go back in time and show you what we would be looking at with someone like Bob and Mary. So let's pretend they're 65, they've just retired, they walk in and Bob has $500,000 sitting in that traditional IRA, or his 401k that is now turned into a traditional IRA. And Bob says, hey, I've got this pension, we've got Social Security, our expenses are low, we don't need to touch any of this money, let's invest it, let's help it grow. Well, that's great, that's what we want. But what I'm also going to say is, well, is there any way that we can get some more tax efficiency for you guys, but also your beneficiaries in the future? And so that's where we would start to explore how Roth conversions could impact their long-term plan. And this is where you're taking that money from a traditional IRA or Bob's 401k tax deferred, and you're converting the money over to the Roth, right? So if we started doing that at 65, and we're looking at income brackets, we're seeing how much room you have. If they're in the 12%, well, maybe we can convert up to $50,000 to fill up that tax bracket. And so we're going to do that 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. And by the time they're 73, the amount of money they have in that tax deferred IRA should be much lower, therefore making their required minimum distribution a lot less money, right? So it helps them because they don't have the forced income. Instead, they're controlling when they're bringing that money out. But it also helps protect Mary if Bob were to pass away, where she doesn't have to take that RMD every year and live in the 22 or 25% tax bracket for the rest of her life. And at the end of the day, also, by doing Roth conversions, can leave a great legacy to your loved ones. So if you're someone that has questions about a tax strategy in retirement, or has an RMD issue, or are worried about the widow's penalty, go below, set some time on my calendar, and let's discuss your situation. We'll have about a 20-25 minute call where I'll learn more about you, and we will just see, are there ways that we can help you? If you're not ready for that, no big deal. Go below. We have a quiz down below called How Much Do I Need to Retire? And it simply asks you a few questions that you can go through, and then we'll send you a personalized report showing you how your investments withstand the rest of your retirement. So thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your day.